I'm here with my friend Matthew the Zoete.
Hello.
You might have seen him in one of my earlier episodes. We're going to talk about starting up a career as a songwriter or as a musician. Yeah, that's what we're going to do.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. So, the first thing they might want to know is, when did you start?
I started playing guitar when I was 12. I'm 29 now. I started writing songs when I was 15, and then I started playing in bars when I was 17 or so.
Wow.
So I did that a lot through high school and university in a few different bands, some of which I was the main songwriter and singer, and some of which I was just a guitarist. And then same thing in university, and then in university I also had my own solo project where I just performed on my own and wrote a lot of songs. And then when I finished university in 2003, I decided to try to focus on music a little bit more.
So that was there a moment that you really thought, okay, this is what I want to do?
Not really, actually, because I went to university for history because I really like history, but I never really knew if there was a career that I wanted to do with my university degree.
Yeah.
And then when I finished, I thought about going to graduate school for more history. And then I realized that I enjoyed writing songs and performing more than I thought I would enjoy any career associated with history or anything. So I thought, well, maybe I'll try to make some money doing what I really enjoy doing.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a gradual process. And then I guess I would say I started my career in 2006 when I put out my first record.
Yeah.
And started touring a lot more then. So.
And from that moment, like your first record came out. What happened? Like, how did your life look? What did your life look like?
It was a period of a lot of changes, because right before the record came out, I bought a house, the house that we're in now. And then I put out that first record, and then a few weeks after that I got married. So it was kind of a big transition from being a single guy living in a small apartment to being married and having a house and putting out a record and trying to do that. So it was like a big step from one kind of life to another kind of life. So yeah, I put out a record and then just started trying to book more shows in cities other than where I lived. So starting out by playing in Toronto or London, which are each about an hour away or so. And then a few months after I put out that record, I booked a tour to the east coast of Canada, like just a 2-week tour, but playing pretty much every night. And then I ended up just touring a lot for the next few years, and that's kind of how I started.
Yeah, there was a question in my mind just now. The first record, you made it yourself? Did you have any?
No, I paid for it myself, but I recorded it in a studio with a producer and a drummer, and bassist, piano player. So yeah, I guess I made it on my own, but also with a lot of people.
Yeah.
I certainly wasn't the one setting up microphones and pushing buttons.
No, of course.
That's not really my forte. So I prefer to pay other people to do that, so I can focus on writing songs and performing them.
And the people you were working with, how did you find them? That's kind of like a tip for my fellow students and me. How do you find people to work with?
I guess for me it was just a lucky coincidence or accident. I'd been playing around Hamilton for a few years, and someone was putting together like a compilation CD as a fundraiser, like a charitable fundraiser, and so they asked a bunch of musicians from the area to record songs for it. And so he asked me to record a song, and so he said, well, the recording date is going to be this day at this studio, and it was an old barn in the countryside about half an hour from where I live. And it's a 100-year-old barn that's being turned into a studio, like not an amateur studio, but a professional studio in a barn. And so I went there just to record this one song, and the guy who owns the studio was producing the recordings for the compilation. I hit it off with him, and so that's how I met him, and he ended up producing my first two records, and I did them both in his studio in the barn. So yeah, I hadn't even heard of him before I went out there, and we just hit it off. So I don't really know too much about auditioning studios or producers, but for my second record, or sorry, for the third record that I've just finished that isn't out now, I hired a different producer and used a different studio and completely different people, and with that I basically decided which producer I wanted to use. Someone that I had met a few years previously and then hadn't been in touch with, but I'd heard a few of the records he'd done and liked them, and so I sent him an email and he remembered me, and we met to chat about it, listen to music, and kind of talk about what kind of record I wanted to make. Played him some of the new songs and he was interested, and then we did, I guess it would be like a demo recording, just one session, because I wanted to see what it would be like to work with him before I gave him thousands of dollars. So we just worked on one song for one evening, and it went really, really well. And so I liked all his ideas and his approach, and just also his working personality.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say if you're hiring a studio or a producer, don't be afraid. At least here in Canada, don't be afraid to ask for either like a free kind of demo thing or like a discounted rate.
Yeah.
Especially with a producer, when you're starting to get to know someone, it's pretty important to know that you're kind of on the same page. And I think the producer should be willing to give you a bit of time for free to figure out how you might work together.
Yeah.
Because that certainly made me feel a lot more comfortable. Also knowing that he was willing to do that to make, because for him as well, if we didn't get along, he probably wouldn't enjoy the project. So once I hired him, I basically let him decide which studio, which engineer, which drummer, bassist, keyboard player, and all with my approval, and I kind of checked into them as well, but I figured I hired him to produce the record, so I should let him produce the record.
So you didn't use the band that you're playing with now?
No.
Oh,
completely different. Yeah, completely different people.
Oh wow.
Yeah, the people in the band that I play with now, I met after I made that record.
Okay.
So, yeah. So it was kind of a big leap of faith that I put in the producer.
Yeah.
Just giving him a bunch of money and saying, produce a record with me. And I didn't let him make every decision, but I kind of wanted to step out of the way and let him be the producer and not try to nitpick or second guess most of his ideas.
But you are very specific in what you want
in some things,
at
but
least that's the feeling I have.
Yeah, but with making the last record, it really wasn't that way at all. I mostly worked on all the songs in pre-production with the producer, and he had a lot of ideas for changing songs, like either the tempo or the rhythm or the key or the arrangement. And for the most part, I tried to be very open to his ideas because, by and large, they were really good ideas.
Yeah.
That when I would go home and listen to, like we would record our working sessions, and when I would listen to the way the song was at the end, it was better. So, at least for me, it was really very helpful to be open to other people's ideas. And not just ideas from anybody, but when you commit to working with someone, if you know that this person has invested some time and effort into getting to know your songs, and they're not just light-hearted suggestions. They've thought about it a lot.
Yeah.
So be open to suggestions, because you can always go back to how it was before. It's not like you've broken the song.
No, sure.
And then with recording the album, we got together for a whole day. Myself, the producer, the bassist, drummer, and keyboard player, and ran through all the songs. The musicians had already received demo recordings, and they all made charts listening to them. So they were familiar with the songs, and then it was kind of just figuring out how they were going to be arranged and performed, and basically I let the band figure that out, with, obviously guidance from myself and the producer, but I kind of thought that you get the best results out of musicians when you let them play what they hear and feel themselves, instead of trying to just use them as a robot to do what you want to hear. I mean, obviously there's certain times where it's like, I really hear, this part on the bass, but generally we left it, let the band. Yeah, because the guy that we hired to play bass is a much better bass player than I am. And same with the drummer and the keyboard player. So I was pretty hands off with everything.
This is something I've been thinking about. Have you ever felt pressure after releasing your first album, because people get to know you and they want to hear new stuff after a while?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I didn't sell nearly enough copies of my first record to feel any kind of pressure. But I guess from like the few or I guess it wasn't all that too few, but the fans that I did make with that record, yeah, because I toured a lot, like all through Canada after I put out that first record for a while, and so then after a while people were like, hey, when's the next record coming out? And then I was kind of thinking, well, I just barely finished paying for making the first one. But then, yeah, I did have a lot of new songs, and the songs that I was writing were a bit different, and the people I was playing with were different. So, yeah, I put out my second record, I guess, 2.5 years after my first one. And so I started recording the second one a year before it was released, so just 1.5 years after the first one was out. There was, I guess I felt some pressure, but also pressure for myself to try to do another record and do better.
So was that pressure on your creativity?
I didn't feel any because I'm usually always writing songs, so I had quite a big stack of songs already again, and we threw most of them out, but then kept another 12. And then I wrote a bunch more songs while we were working on the record, and I found it to be maybe a little inspiring, or just knowing that I was working in the studio a fair bit. It's like, I want to try writing another song, or okay, so I thought I had 12 really good songs, but now we've chopped down a bunch more songs, so maybe I need 3 or 4 more keeper songs, so that I would, try to focus on writing it there. But I didn't really feel too much pressure, because around that time I found it pretty easy to write songs, for whatever reason. And it comes and goes. So.
And what was your confidence like when you just started? Like in performing, but also in, for example, calling yourself an artist, or introducing yourself as, hi, I'm an artist, I'm a singer-songwriter, or
yeah, I guess I never really, back when I started, I didn't even think about that. I guess I was a student, or then a young adult working who also did music, and then when I put out my first record, I guess I started to think of myself that way a little bit. But it still just kind of seemed like something I did, as opposed to something I was. I think that's maybe been a gradual process, and I don't think I'm even quite all the way there yet. So I guess confidence kind of ebbs and flows as well. Sometimes you feel really good about what you're doing and think, this is really good stuff, and I feel confident in who I am as a musician, and other times the exact opposite is true, and it can really vary from one day to the next, or morning to afternoon. But I guess for me, I kind of decided to ignore that, and I guess I know for myself that this is what I'm doing, and that I think long term it's worth doing. And so the kind of day-to-day ups and downs, I don't really think about too much. I guess I certainly still experience them a lot and get caught up in them sometimes, but I try to take the long view. And so I think that's more of a conscious decision that's informed by enough positive experiences, and just kind of deciding for yourself that this is what you're going to do regardless of how it goes one day to the next. And I guess for me it's been a very slow progression and growth, but things are still heading in the right direction. So as long as the long-term trend is positive, then I guess I'm fairly or certain enough in what I'm doing.
And that's the same when you're on stage playing?
Yeah, that can vary a lot too, from based on if I really want to be there, or if I don't for some reason, or a lot of it is how
it's a little distracting.
The cat is scratching. A lot of it is how the sound is. Like if I feel like the mix is good, and then I feel a lot better or more confident performing. Also, how the audience is, not necessarily how many people are there, but if they seem like they'll be receptive, or if they're just talking through it or not enjoying it. But that, I think, has the largest effect if you can see that the audience is interested in what you're doing and responding to it at least somewhat well, then that I find that gives me a lot of confidence to maybe play a quieter song or a song I wouldn't normally play, or talk a little more between songs to give people a little bit more of an introduction or background. And if I don't get that positive feeling from an audience, it can be very hard to want to talk too much, or you just want to try to get it over with as quickly as possible. Or sometimes you get a little bit of an adversarial attitude where it's like, oh, I want to just play really loud songs to try to play louder. But I find that usually backfires because then they just talk louder. And so sometimes, I think my voice sounds really great one night, and the next night I might think that it sounds terrible. But that's all kind of up and down. So I guess the goal is to try to find ways to feel at least confident enough every night, and so I do a lot more vocal warm-ups now and warm up my fingers to try to know that at least I've done what I can do. I try to do whatever I can to guide the audience to be attentive, like whether that's having it dark in the audience and a bit brighter on stage to focus the attention with lights, or try to talk even if people are talking, because often if you do talk to people and say something that catches their attention, they will focus on what you're doing. So I think it's also maybe a matter of paying a bit more attention to how I perform and trying to be maybe a little more professional about it and be a little more conscious about it, not just going with the flow or letting things happen as they will, but try to guide it a little bit more to bring out the best.
Do you have an example for that? How you like changed the attitude of the audience in
sometimes I can think of times just being out on tour where people aren't really listening, and then I'll start telling a story, and if a couple of people who are listening start listening even more, usually that spreads a little bit, and once you get people's attention with the story, sometimes that's almost easier to keep their attention when you're talking than it is when you're singing, because they've heard background music so much. But if you're actually telling an interesting story into a microphone, that I find really effective. But it can be really difficult because if you're singing, you can hide behind your guitar or piano or whatever, whereas if you're just talking. So that, or I can think of specific times where I was going to play a really loud song because people were just talking. And then instead I played a very quiet song, and then slowly people start to realize that they're being louder than the music, so then they feel self-conscious, but then they actually start to listen and get interested in what they're hearing. So, but it doesn't work every time.
No, of course.
For sure.
Do you have any tips for making contacts?
Maybe don't be afraid of introducing yourself to people that you don't know. And I guess a lot of the times I don't like going out because it's more comfortable to stay at home and read a book or play guitar or work on a song. But so I think you don't meet people unless if you go out and make a point of trying to meet people. If you are out somewhere, I had to consciously get over some shyness or just trying to blend in and be a fly on the wall, but instead actively just going up to people and introducing myself. And it could be just someone who happens to be there, or it could be someone who's a producer or a drummer or whatever, and just being friendly and chatting and not being too pushy either, I guess. Like there's, at least for me, there's nothing wrong with saying who you are and what you do, but if you're right away trying to get something from someone, they can usually sense that. And I can sense that, I guess, when I meet people and right away, like there's nothing wrong with asking for help, but if you're, right away saying, oh, you're going out on tour for 2 weeks, can I come along and open? Like I've had people ask if they could, ride along in my car and open every show on a 2-week tour. It's like, well, I just met you.
So what part does the internet play in your musical career?
More than I wish it would. I don't really like computers. But I spend a lot of time on the computer. I do all my own booking and promotion and
Sorry, I was just thinking, is he saying exactly the same as
I spend a lot of time on the computer because I guess I do all the different jobs. updating my own website, posting stuff online. But it is a very, as much as I dislike it, it is a very, very helpful tool. Like, I've been able to tour all over North America and Europe several times, playing over 100 shows a year, all booked on my own, just by sending emails. Sending emails with links to my music, and also just researching venues in whatever city it is that I want to play in, or finding suitable venues or suitable people to contact with questions, all by the internet. And so, as much as I dislike it, it has pretty much been the big facilitator for at least how I'm doing what I'm doing, without really any outside help at all, like without a manager or a booking agent. So it plays a very big role. I would be confident in saying that I spend more time on the computer than I do actually playing music. Which is unfortunate, but that's kind of how it is. And so, it plays a big role. Booking shows online, updating a website, having a Facebook profile, emailing fans to let them know when you're coming to play a show near them, or when you have a new record out, and also doing promotion to, if it's magazines or newspapers or radio stations. All of that I do online, and then whenever I call someone, I've gotten their phone number by finding it online. So it's pretty much the big tool that I use for everything.
There was, I have to scroll down to find one of my friends. I put a post on the internet to ask if my fellow students and friends had questions for people that I was going to talk to. And one of my friends had a really interesting question. Of the following, what makes you happiest and why? One, writing a song and finishing a song, or hearing a master track after it's being recorded, or playing it in front of an audience and hearing their appreciation. And why, of course.
It used to be the first one, writing a song. It's definitely what I enjoyed most. And if I knew it was a song that I wasn't going to throw away, because I throw away the vast majority of the songs that I write. So like knowing you have a keeper, I guess hearing a finished recording now might be the most satisfying, just because that's for the last year, that's kind of what I've been focusing on, making a new record. But at the same time, I think performing live is what I enjoy doing the most now, because that's where you get to see the effect that your music has on other people and how other people respond to it. And I guess that's the most enjoyable for me right now, that energy. And also, I guess there's some spontaneity there, in how you introduce a song, how the audience is going to respond, how you respond to the audience, and just how you're going to play it that evening.
You never know what's going to happen, and that's kind of fun.
But then, at the same time, when I'm still working on songs now, when I do write a song that I think is a keeper, that is for me, I find it a very reassuring feeling to know that I can still do that, because I find it very easy to get down into a little bit of self-doubt if you write 5 or 6 songs in a row that are okay, and they have they're finished songs with a verse, chorus, bridge, intro, all that stuff, but it's just like there's that certain sparkle that's missing, and for whatever reason, if you get a song that you're going to keep, then that I find to be very reassuring, and there's a lot of confirmation in that. But then at the same time, if you play an older or a newer song for a room full of people and they really respond to it, that's the same kind of feeling. So hopefully that answers the question.
We'll ask Neil. That's most of what I was planning to ask. So, over to the tip of the day.
Hi, I'm Matthew Zoete here with another tip of the day. And like it or not, my tip is be prepared to work hard and follow through. And I guess that applies to any aspect of making music, whether it's writing a song or trying to book shows or trying to promote shows or anything. I guess for me what I've found to be the most helpful is the times when I force myself to spend the extra 20 minutes or the extra 3 hours to really follow through on something and really work with a song, or really make sure that I've explored every option for booking a show somewhere, and to treat it like a job, because as much as it is about making music because you love making music, if you want to keep doing it professionally as something that you earn a living with, for me it's been very helpful to remind myself of that as often as I need to, that if I want it to be a job, I should treat it like a job.
Thank you.
You're welcome.